Hello everyone! So it's pretty cold here in Colorado and it's snowing outside, so I'm going to try and get this done with as quickly as I can. But what we are doing today is replacing some CV axles on my black WRX, because I have two. One's purple, one's black. Anyway, those axles have needed replaced for a little while now, I just haven't gotten around to it. So we've got some new axles here. This is what they look like. Subaru's nice because you just need two of the same part number in the front and they're exactly the same. So this is the end that goes through your wheel hub. This is your axle nut here. And then this is the end that attaches to the transmission. Subarus are kind of nice because they're female ended. So you slide this over the output shaft instead of into the output shaft, and then it's retained with a little pin. And that just makes it a little bit easier in my opinion. I don't really like dealing with circlips, they're kind of a pain. So this is a little bit more involved of a repair, but it shouldn't be too hard to explain everything, and I'll try and show you guys what I'm doing as I go along. Probably take us about 30-45 minutes per side, but obviously I'm not going to show you an hour and a half of footage, so. Okay, so first step is to break loose your lug nuts. It's just way easier to do with the car on the ground, and then we'll put the car up and then remove them and remove the wheels. Will. Helpful doggo, you were in the way. Go over there. Go on. Alright, so now we're going to remove the wheel with an electric impact wrench. Alright, so the part that I showed you earlier that goes through your wheel hub comes out right here. This is your axle nut. So we're going to break that loose and then pull the axle out through here. This is the axle shaft itself. So this rubber boot that you probably can't see yet is ripped open and it's flinging grease everywhere. So in order to do that, we've got to disconnect the lower ball joint, which is down here, so that we can basically swing the rotor, the suspension assembly out away from the axle here, and then we'll pull that out, disconnect it from the transmission side, replace it, and put everything back together. Alright, so this is the boot. The one that's ripped open is on the other side in there, but we'll get to that later. I'll show you after it's pulled off. Okay, so like I said, first things first, we've got to break loose the axle nut here. It's got a big socket. This one's 32 millimeters, a very large breaker bar, and then you need some way to hold the wheel so it doesn't turn while you're doing this, because it will. So there's a couple ways to do it. You can either have somebody in the car pressing on the brakes, and that should be enough to hold this steady, or you can use a very large screwdriver, like I am, and stick it through the vanes of your rotor, resting on the caliper here, and then that will resist the force that you're applying to this and break it loose. Okay, and then once the nut's loose, you can just pull it off the rest of the way. Sometimes you can get it by hand, sometimes you need a power tool, but this one's obviously loose enough that it shouldn't be an issue. And then this can just be set aside. Our new axles usually come with new axle nuts, so we don't need to reuse this. Generally, it's a good idea to not reuse it, even if your axle isn't new, but you can if it's not super rusty or old. Alright, so after the axle nut is loose, we need to remove this ball joint from the knuckle here. So this is the ball joint, and this is the pinch bolt. So the pinch bolt retains the ball joint into the knuckle, which is this bigger piece. So we're gonna break this loose, pull it out, and then use a very large pry bar to pull this ball joint out of the knuckle. So I'll just insert this end of the pry bar. It's very large. Yes, hello, helpful doggo. All right, behind or between the control arm and the ball joint, and then pull up or pry down however you need to get it to break loose. That one was not very rusty, so it came off nice and easy. As you can see, sometimes there's a very loud pop. That's just the rust breaking loose. So now, as you can tell, the rotor kind of rotates around. And now you can see here that the axle shaft is just going to slide out. So we're going to press that in, pull from the back a little, whatever we need to do, wiggle it out. And now it's out. You see that here. And then we'll just rest this there. And then we're going to go to underneath the car and remove this from the transmission side. Pull the whole thing out, switch them out. It's nice and simple. Okay, so that little pin that I showed you sits through the end of the axle and the output shaft, which comes out right here. And so we're gonna punch that out. You can use a punch or a thin screwdriver. I don't have any punches, so, and just hammer it out. It shouldn't take a whole lot of force. It's just a retaining pin. Ta-da! So, pins out, and this whole thing should just slide out now. Nice and simple. So, just like that. And now our axle is out. I think you can see this, but this part that's turning right here, that's the output shaft. And here's the hole. That's where the pin sat to retain the axle on the output shaft. And then this metal frame is your axle seal. Well, it's the seal cover. The seal is actually behind this on Subarus. Fortunately, this one's not leaking. Sometimes they do, but you'd see like oil residue right here and stuff. So we don't need to replace these at all. We'll just leave them the way they are and throw the new axle on, and we should be good to go on this side, and then we'll do the other side. So this is the old one. I was mistaken. I thought one of these boots was ripped open. I guess it's just the other side. But I already ordered 2 axles, so we're just gonna replace both of them at the same time and it'll be fine. Okay, so there's a couple ways that you can get this new axle in, but you do have to hold the rotor out of the way. Sometimes it's easier with 2 people, but I'm just gonna hold it out of the way with my knee here and just do this as quickly as I can. But anyway, what we're gonna do is line up the teeth on the inside of this axle here with the teeth on the output shaft on the transmission, and then we're just gonna slide it over, and then we'll put the pin in through the hole so that it stays in place, and then we'll move back out to the outside. Okay, so usually once you get it lined up, just try and turn it, make sure that it's smooth and stuff. Don't pull out on it or it'll slide out again. But you can rest it on your control arm here, and then we'll move to the underside of the car to put the pin in. So you know your axles are lined up like in the right spot when this hole goes all the way through, because that's where you have to put your pin. So you do have to be kind of careful of that. You can't just like throw it in there willy-nilly and stuff, but still it's not that hard to adjust. So now we just slide this pin in. You are going to have to tap it in because it is kind of pressure based, so get it started, and then take your hammer and just tap it all the way through until the end is flush. Alright, so now that we've got our transmission side in, now it's time to put this end back through the hub. So we're going to basically reverse what we did earlier to pull it out. We're going to kind of fold it so that it's sort of at the right angle, pull this in front, line up the teeth, and just push it through. And then we'll stick the axle nut on so it doesn't fall out on us again, just loosely. And then we'll put the ball joint back in and put the wheel on, torque everything down, make sure we're good to go. Pull this out. line this up with the hole in the back and the teeth. Straighten it out. Push it through, just like that. And then just put this on a few threads just so that you don't pull the axle back out while you're messing with getting the ball joint lined up. We're going to need to pry down on the control arm that holds the ball joint and just kind of maneuver it a little bit so that it's directly under the hole in the knuckle, and then we'll let up on the pry bar slowly so that the ball joint just kind of slides back into the knuckle, and then we'll just get it torqued down. It should be pretty simple. So just line it up like that. And then we'll probably use the jack or just wiggle it until it sets. It might just need the jack. Okay, shouldn't take much, just a little bit of something. There we go. So you can see it pop in. Looks like it needs just a little bit more. We'll just keep going until it goes all the way, just like that. And then we just stick the bolt in, tighten it down, and then the ball joint's back together. Bolt. Thread it by hand first before using power tools. Okay, so now we just need to torque this pinch bolt down. Torque spec on this is about 37 foot-pounds, so that's what I've set my torque wrench to. And we're gonna put it on there, tighten it down, and then do the axle nut. Alright, so we've got a very large torque wrench here. This one goes up to about 300 foot-pounds or so, and that's more than enough to torque this down. This axle nut, the spec on that is 145. So we've got that on, and our screwdriver's in place, so we can just go ahead and torque it. Might take a couple turns, but when you hear the click, then it's good. And I always make it click a couple times just to be extra sure. So we're good. And then I'll show you how to stake it. So this notch here is a space for you to stake this nut, and all that does is prevent the nut from spinning off of the axle and your axle falling out. So we gave it a couple good whacks and it looks pretty good. I'm gonna kind of use just the corner of this instead of the screwdriver. So just kind of hold it at an angle really and give it another whack. That should be good enough. You can see it in the divot, and that'll just prevent the nut from spinning. Alright, so we've got some nice new shoes for this car here. We've got some Sparco Terras, and we've got Blizzak studless on them. These are really nice tires for the winter in Colorado, and since they're studless, we don't necessarily have to remove them in the spring, but we probably will anyway. Alright, so we're just going to put these on. Obviously it's pretty simple to just line up the lug nut holes, put the lug nuts on, thread them by hand so we don't cross thread, and then torque them down once the car is on the ground. So thread it several turns by hand so you can make sure that it's nice and smooth, nothing's cross-threaded. And your power tool. When you put lug nuts on, and when you torque them down as well, you should always put it in a star pattern so that the wheel sits straight against the hub and the rotor. Alright, so this is our old axle. As you can see, this boot is ripped open. It's all wobbly and gross, and there's not a whole lot of grease in there. This was what was clicking. And so now we've replaced it. Looks like this one was actually original. Every original Subaru axle that I've seen has this green color. So the other one had been replaced before, so I'm probably just going to keep it for an emergency or something. But this one is garbage, so we're going to metal recycle it, and that's it. Now everything that we needed to get done today is done. Both axles are replaced in the front, and we have 4 new wheels on the car with new winter tires. So last thing that we need to do is torque our wheels so we don't lose a wheel while we're driving. This is extremely important. Torque spec on these lug nuts are about 85 foot-pounds. Remember that I said earlier to go in a star-shaped pattern. Other than that, it's just tightening bolts. And we are done for the day, and I can go inside and get warm. Alright, well, thanks for watching. It's good making another video for you guys. Sorry it took me a little while, but we will see you again shortly. See ya.